The Auburn Tigers are not necessarily playing a football game that they need to worry about here in the next several months, but no offensive coordinator, no defensive coordinator, not a good look for the program when, as it stands right now, Brian Harsin, the head coach, is chasing just about everybody off campus for some particular reason. There are certainly rumors out there concerning Brian Harsin's conduct off the field. It's a program that lost 5 consecutive games to conclude 2021, including a bowl loss to Houston. Some of those performances were rather uninspiring, of course, as losses like a blown lead of 28-3 against Mississippi State, in which they gave up 40 consecutive points, an inspired effort, to give them credit, and a disclaimer against the Alabama Crimson Tide in the Iron Bowl, but 6-7 with 5 consecutive defeats, losing your defensive coordinator to Oklahoma State, which would seem to be a drop in tier of program, if nothing else. At the very best, it's a lateral move. And then the offensive coordinator, who was only with the program for a few weeks, decides to quit and leave campus, as are many players. As we understand it from a few different sources, the Auburn athletic director gave a less than inspiring speech to the team to try to galvanize them and hold them together and give them a bit of a morale boost with Brian Harsin on vacation. That's one coaching note. The other one is, of course, old news at this point, but still seems to get people fired up, and it should get the Michigan fan base fired up as well. Jim Harbaugh, of course, took his tour across the country to places like Las Vegas and Miami and Minneapolis, and took a flight on National Signing Day to Minneapolis and returned without an NFL job. Therefore, he was welcomed back with open arms by athletic director Ward Manuel. We have covered that one from top to bottom here at the Voice of College Football. So check out the many videos and live streams on the Jim Harbaugh saga at Michigan, but certainly that is still at the forefront of the college football conversation, as is the comments made first by Lane Kiffin to Yahoo concerning a luxury tax that should probably tongue-in-cheek be placed on Texas A&M with their NIL slush fund of sorts that they're being accused of, which, unless there's something that's unbeknownst to all of us, is certainly legal based on and within the guidelines based on the way this has been operating since last July. But Jimbo Fisher still felt offended, and as he termed it a number of times at his National Signing Days news conference, pissed off that he would have to take that type of onslaught from the likes of somebody called Sliced Bread. I've got 2 different versions of sliced bread out in the kitchen right now, but there is an individual apparently by the name of Sliced Bread who was the first to accuse Texas A&M. And again, is it really an accusation? They are simply collecting money for NIL deals in this wild, wild west of college football that apparently totaled $30 million that Jimbo Fisher denies. And that's where we stand. So we're going to take your calls. Hear me out on this one. Nobody needs to call and apologize for wanting to talk about anything else. We do not need to talk about Auburn and Brian Harsin. We do not definitely need to talk about Jim Harbaugh and Michigan. It seems like that's all I've talked about for the last 10 days. And we certainly do not need to talk about Jimbo Fisher and Lane Kiffin. Just serve them up as interesting and intriguing coaching situations. We will call it that here in college football. Appreciate everybody being here on a Friday night. Decided to strike up the live stream, and thank you for all of you being here. And hopefully you're safe and sound and warm as well. Let me check out a few comments before we take our first call here at the Voice of College Football. And it's a number of comments already. DeReal MVP's here. Exploring with Ben here. Eric here. Good to see you. Amazon says Mark's Oregon helmet arrived today. Did it really? Okay, that's good news. Then it's down to the P.O. box for me to pick it up. Thank you so much for that, Eric. That's awesome. John, going to start calling you honorable mentioning with Ben if you keep showing up fourth. Man. There we go. It must be a darker foresty green coming in the mail for us here. Looking forward to that. Who else is on the line? Exploring with Ben, Eric. All right. I believe we've got a caller on the line, so let's get right to that. No, we don't. Thought we did. We did at one point. They probably got tired of waiting. The natty talk is like banging your head against a wall. Miami still does it too. Dennis Hattie's here. Wasn't Chip part of a group of coaches using that offense? Here we go. Going to take this call. Give me 2 seconds to get the earpiece in, and we will get rolling. Seems like it's been forever since I did a call-in show. My goodness. All right. Welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. It's still reeling.
It sure is. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. How about you?
I am good. I'm ready to talk. What's on your mind?
Well, there's a lot that has happened in 1 week of college football, hasn't there?
Yeah, it's been an active off season already.
Now, that's the first thing I actually wanted to talk about. Do you think off seasons are going to be more active because of the transfer portal and stuff like that, or do you think this is just all a one-hit wonder?
Well, it's going to be somewhere in between those two extremes. This is not an aberration, but it's also probably going to calm down, because what we're going to have is that we're going to have players that are going to determine that the grass is not always the greener. They're going to start to become reports now that we're a few seasons into this. They're going to start to be circulating reports of players who could not find a destination. So it's going to cause players to be more hesitant to enter the transfer portal, just from the standpoint of playing time, their situation not necessarily being better somewhere else, and number three, that they may flat out not get a scholarship. They're giving a scholarship exploring the transfer portal. So I expect it, even if it's not regulated, which I would hope it's going to be regulated, if not for any other reason or in any other way, to at least narrow down the windows of time. I would implement 2 1-month transfer portal timeframes. One would be directly after the season. So roughly, let's say after the bowl season, roughly January 5th, something in that range, to early February, first weekend of January, take it into February. And then the other one would be after spring practice, let's say after everybody completes their spring games, May 1st to, let's say, June 1st, and then shut everything down on June 1st. Whichever team, whichever school you're enrolled at and signed for, that's who you're going to have to suit up for the next season on June 1st. That gives the coaches 2 full months to regulate and look over and review their roster and know their roster from June 1st to August 1st when they open camp.
That's I like that. I think that's a pretty good idea. Now, the only thing I'm going to disagree with in that answer is I think certain players, I don't think the lack of scholarship is going to demean them because they're so good, like Caleb Williams. for example, a player that's talented, I don't think he's going to be fazed by the stories of losing your scholarship.
Oh, no. And he shouldn't be.
So I think the names could, because we don't hear about most of the players in the transfer portal. We only hear about a select few and care about a select few.
True. Yes, if CJ Stroud decided today that he wants to go into the transfer portal, he's got, he doesn't have a care in the world. Every school in the country is going to want him.
Right. And, I know you said you don't have to talk about Auburn, but I wanted to talk about them. And I would like to talk about them next season. And if I said Auburn goes winless in the SEC West, would that be surprising?
In the SEC West, it would be. I would be surprised, but they are headed toward being the worst team in the division. Yeah.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean they're a bad team.
No, it doesn't.
Horrible, but that division, man. I mean, if you look individually at every single game, what game would they be favored right now?
None.
Yeah.
LSU is going to be a much better team on September 1st than they are now. LSU is trending in the right direction. They've got a top-notch head coach. Their roster is still shaky, but they're picking up transfers like by the day, and they recruited well. So LSU is going to be so much more improved, and it has the ceiling to improve between now and opening day versus Auburn. To underline your point, and maybe some ACC folks won't be happy with me, but Auburn could be the worst. They are the worst team in the division right this second, and to your point, could lose every division game. They also could be transferred to the ACC Coastal and possibly win it. Possibly.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if they played Virginia, Miami, somebody like that, I think it would be an even close game.
Oh, sure.
So it's not crazy to say that, at least in my opinion. I also think with the Michigan story, something about it is off, in my opinion. Like, the timing of it from Jim Harbaugh leaving to staying, with it being signing day number 2, I don't think we're getting the full story. What's your thoughts about it, Mark?
Well, I think the full story, for as much as we can gather from being on the outside, is that Jim Harbaugh wanted to coach in the NFL this year. And he had 3 opportunities, and I don't know if it was simply a situation where he would coach anywhere in the NFL over Michigan and he would have taken any job, or if the 3 that he was connected to, reported to be connected to, Miami, Vegas, and Minnesota, that he had some kind of pecking order, and Michigan was in that pecking order. So let's say Vegas was 1 and Michigan was 2, and then whatever the deal, I think it's pretty apparent that unless Jim Harbaugh is brain dead and doesn't realize what the optics are and the perception of getting on a flight and going to Minneapolis on National Signing Day, after you've already spent 35 days talking to 2 other NFL teams without thinking that he was going to get the job, then I don't know what he's thinking. Like, if I'm Jim Harbaugh, I don't get on a flight to Minneapolis thinking I'm one of like 3 people that are interviewing for this job and it's simply an interview. And I'm most likely going to be getting back on this flight and going back to Michigan, still the head coach at Michigan. I think he got on that flight thinking he was going to get that job or already had the job.
And do you think that this could be a potential distraction for the off season, the spring camps for the Michigan players, because in the back of their mind thinking, we don't know how committed our head coach is, so why would we be committed to the team?
Well, so I've talked the Michigan angle on this. I've had our various Michigan guys on to talk about this, and certainly there's the Ohio State version, and I'll point them out for obvious reasons. There's an entire college football fan base that's not Michigan, but of course, Ohio State fans have the most interest in bashing Michigan. So you've got two extremes. One that everything's fine, everything's good. He's Mr. Michigan man, and nobody's going to bat an eye. And he's convinced everybody that, hey, I'm all in, and everything's fine, and all is forgotten. And then you've got your other end of the spectrum that things are just going to fall apart because people's egos are bruised and they don't think that he's all in. Well, he's still being paid a ton of money. He still loves his university. I have no doubt about that. I don't know a lot about Jim Harbaugh, nor is a lot clear about the way he's just an awkward, kind of strange kind of dude. But the one thing I do know about him is that he loves Michigan. He loves the University of Michigan. So I don't believe that there's an issue with his buy-in for this football season, and then he wants to win and he will do his very best. But I think he's damaged his reputation and the loyalty factor for a lot of people there.
Okay, I get that, and I get that from the Jim Harbaugh angle. But what about from the new recruits and the veterans on the team that are playing the game?
Yeah, so it looks like, as I just stated, it looks like Jim Harbaugh desperately wanted to coach in the NFL and did not get a job. So that is something
Right.
that he's going to have to overcome and address. The best way to do that is to win a lot of games this year, because winning heals all to a certain extent. But for the incoming possible recruits, the guys that he has to convince to come to Michigan, he's going to have to talk his way around that. Now, he made a statement to Ward Manuel, the AD. Apparently, I don't know. I asked a few people where this was picked up, but it's all over the place. So apparently, he made the statement that that he is the Michigan coach. That he's done with that. He's done looking. He's the Michigan coach for as long as they will have him. And if he doesn't live up to those words, then, he's going to have hell to pay in the public and in social media.
Right. Well, when you talk about winning being all, I think that can tie back into the Auburn thing, because if Auburn's head coach, Brian Harsin, if he won 9 or 10 games his first year, I think all the scandals and stuff would fly right on over him.
Oh, yeah.
So people are using him, because have you seen the list of names that are thrown out to replace him?
He gets
fired?
I've not looked into that. No.
Well, if you look at their character reputation, they would be questionable at best. Like Hugh Freeze has been mentioned. Urban Meyer has been mentioned. I mean, these aren't exactly model citizens in society, I would say.
Yeah, but where are these coming from? Because anytime there's a head coaching job that's one of the top 15 programs of the country, those are two names, especially in the South with Hugh Freeze, that get thrown out there. So I don't know if that's a reputable list, though.
It's from fans.
Yeah, so it doesn't mean anything.
Fans are short for fanatics.
Yeah, so that's why I say that list doesn't mean anything.
But yeah, it's an interesting time. And the final thing is, I know your Notre Dame channel, you're trying to get that to 1,000 subscribers, and you all can help by going over there and subscribing to that channel. So, Mark, what is your What do you think the expectations for Marcus Freeman should be in his first year?
The expectation should be that Notre Dame's going to go 10-2 from a wins perspective.
And are you locking? Are we getting a lock-in prediction right here in February that 10-2 is going to be their record?
Come on, the real MVP. You know me better than that. Am I locking in on predictions in February? No.
Hey man, I got to try. I had to try.
No, not locking in on predictions.
If I didn't try, I wouldn't be a fan.
No spring football yet. Transfer portal still going crazy. They've got Clemson and Ohio State. They're your two losses probably right there. In talking to Ohio State people, I think they're chalking up this Notre Dame win a little too easily. They seem to be bypassing and talking about how they're going to kick Marcus Freeman all over the field, and I don't necessarily see it that way.
Well, what do you think the line would be if it was right now?
Ohio State's
Ohio
probably
State?
Just under a touchdown favorite.
Yeah, I was thinking around 10 points. It's hard just because I haven't seen Notre Dame win a big game in a while. I know that's mean, but
what's a big game?
Every time they just feel like they get blown out. New Year's Six bowl game, a conference championship game, a playoff game.
Well, no, they haven't done those things. They haven't won a playoff game or a conference championship game. They don't play in a conference. They played in one conference championship game. They beat Clemson in 2020.
Yeah, but that was without Trevor Lawrence.
Okay, well, yeah, true. They can't help that, but
well, I think that mattered a bit in the game, and I think the second result is more indicative than the first result on the field that year. But regardless, that's history. That's in the past. Got to keep looking forward for these programs. Get Mark to 1,000 subscribers on his Notre Dame channel, and make sure to hit the like on this video. That way more people can get to talk and trash talk college football.
There it is.
I'll wait. See you next time, Mark.
Thanks, man. Have a good night.
You do this.
Oh. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Well, you know what, Mark Rogers? I always knew that Jim Harbaugh was a little bit different. But I think in this instance, I think his arrogance is also at display here. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I would agree. He seems to... There seems to be an odd combination of arrogance and lack of awareness. So I don't know if it's 50-50 or 90-10 one way or the other, but he just, and you have to admire someone to a certain extent who doesn't care and who just marches by the beat of their own drum and all those things. So there's something to be admired about that. But when you hold a position at a public university and you're the head football coach at a major school, you also need to understand that as well.
I totally agree with you, Mark. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, give it up to the man that gives college football its voice, the great Mark Rogers. Subscribe to the channel. He's a good man. I just have to go here, and I heard your conversation with your new good friend, Steve Dace. I think that, you know what, and I can see where Dace is coming from. I mean, how you desert your coaches and your players on National Signing Day and leave them, kind of twisting in the wind as you go. And by the way, he thought he had the job, Mark. That's where I think his arrogance came into play. He thought he had the job in the bag. And they're trying to tell him, whoa, pump the brakes here, pal. This is just an interview process. We've got other people to take a look at here. And that's what struck me about this whole thing. That's why I say his arrogance came into play. I always knew he was a little bit quirky and a little bit different with some of his actions from the past. But I think this time, I just think his arrogance got the best of him. And I can see where Dace is coming from. Because you have to take a look at this, Mark. I mean, how can future recruits trust him when they see a coach that might be looking around the corner for the next opening as a pro job and might be looking to move on that going forward?
Yeah, I think recruits are smart enough and savvy enough in this day and age to know the difference between an upward move or an individual, a coach who is really looking for one particular job, whether that's close to home or an alma mater or an NFL job that's not just, I'll take any NFL job. So that was the view that we got of Jim Harbaugh, was that he just wanted an NFL job. And you're right. And that's why I said there's some kind of odd split between self-awareness and arrogance, in that how do you get on that flight knowing that this is being reported all over the place if you don't have that job?
Right.
Because in this day and age, I would sit at home and I would say, you know what? We can take care of everything we need to take care of regarding negotiations and interviewing from home on a Zoom call. And I'll get on a flight because I've got to protect, excuse me, I've got to protect all those things that you laid out. I've got to protect at the University of Michigan. This is a high-level job. It's very competitive. I cannot give my competitors ammunition on the recruiting trail. I cannot lose the trust of my current players or prospective future players. I'm staying here until I know I've got a job, and I will get on a plane and we can announce that I'm the new head coach of the Minnesota Vikings.
Yeah, Mark, first of all, I think we both know he's been a cocky guy since way back in 1986, right, Mark?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, we lived through that, unfortunately. But I just have to say, and I get the guy has had a level of success. He got within 5 yards of winning the Super Bowl. I give him credit for that. You know, he had a good run with the 49ers. I understand all that. I get that. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he left the 49ers not just so he could go home and coach his alma mater, but I believe he had a disagreement with Trent Baalke there, the general manager, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure he did. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that was part of his departure there. You know, the other thing, too, that I think that was at play here, and I don't know if this was your initial thoughts on the thing. Did you think that he was just doing this for leverage? Because that's what I was wondering, to see if he could get some more dough out of the team up north and, get a better deal out of them after, what he did last year.
I saw you make that comment a couple of times in the chat, and it certainly could be the case. That's not what I think happened, but I would not be surprised if it were. So that's one way to look at it. I think it was simply that I think all of his leverage to get back to the salary prior to 2021 was what he accomplished on the field. I think he could make that claim and have that argument. And so I think that he certainly was genuinely interested in going back to the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of glad that he came back so he can get his butt whooping in Columbus this coming year, because he's going to have his comeuppance this year in Columbus. Now, I know they've got a light schedule, and they should do all right with it. But I hope they come into Columbus with something to play for, because I am so we owe him one, and this ain't going to be 1986 Harbaugh. You're coming in there and you're going to get 50, maybe even 60 dropped on you. I'm calling it right. I'm calling my shot right now.
Wow.
As an Ohio State fan. I mean, listen, they had their nice year. They had their one win in 10 years. They're losing a lot on defense. Now, I know they've got some stuff coming back on offense. We'll see about McCarthy at quarterback. I think Edwards could be pretty good at tailback going forward for them. I know they've got some talent. I'm not denying that. Top 8, top 9 class. That's all well and good. But this Buckeye offense this year, we're still going to have maybe the best group of receivers. And on top of that, we've got one of the 2 best quarterbacks in the country.
So based on what you just said,
Stroud.
if I told you right now that Ohio State was going to beat Michigan by 1 point, would you be disappointed?
First of all, I'm never disappointed when we beat them.
Okay.
So no.
Okay.
But I'm just confident that this year that we're going to be better on defense, and our offense is going to be explosive. Travion Henderson at running back, offensive line's going to be solid. I'm confident in this team's ability to bounce back. We had a young team last year, and I believe they caught us at the right time. And yeah, there's going to be hell to pay when they come to Columbus next year. That's all I've got to say. I did want to get to Jimbo Fisher here for a second, Mark. Did you hear any of his comments about when he was kind of calling out people that were making the accusations against him about kind of NIL and and his players might be getting some financial inducements?
I certainly did. I actually, for the first time, I started a live stream and I actually played the video clip.
I mean, what are your overall thoughts? Just because I didn't get a chance to hear them.
I may be in the minority here, but I think he's justified. So Lane Kiffin makes a comment. Lane Kiffin makes a comment. So there are a few different directions in which he took some jabs that he didn't like. Right. One would be from Lane Kiffin telling Yahoo Sports that basically kind of not verbatim, paraphrase, it's not fair. Not everybody's got the same amount of money. They should be throwing a luxury tax on Texas A&M for what they paid for this recruiting class. Okay. To Jimbo Fisher's point, this is the guy that is raking in transfer portal additions like nobody's business. Okay. And we don't know so much about what kind of money is being exchanged and who is and how many players, 10% of the players, 40% of the players. So the transfer portal, the same conjecture could be made about the transfer portal. Are you acquiring better and more players than other teams because you are paying the players? And in this new world, that's not, as long as it's being done through a third party and all that, which we don't know, and the school sanctions it. We can't even go anywhere and say, we know that this is legal, that's not legal. So it's all a bit haphazard, but it just seems hypocritical of Lane Kiffin to make that comment about Jimbo Fisher. He should basically, in my opinion, keep his mouth shut and not make an excuse for somebody else having a number one recruiting class.
Right.
Maybe Texas A&M did, and most likely they did utilize their resources to acquire the best recruiting class in the country. But there's nothing wrong with that as we stand.
So you think that's a little bit of Kiffin, people in glass houses shouldn't be throwing stones type situation there, Mark?
I do. So if Lane Kiffin's going to make that comment about being poor old Ole Miss, then there's another 85 coaches in the country that could be pointing at Ole Miss and saying, well, we don't have their resources, so we don't get the chance to acquire the Clark Lee at Vanderbilt can then point to Ole Miss and say, well, we don't have their resources. I can't pay players like Lane Kiffin can, and he can take his jabs.
Okay. Couple points that I wanted to make on this one, Mark, and then you can go ahead and just kind of, I want to see what you think about what I'm going to throw out here. Number one, I was kind of wondering, where NIL and this whole situation would take us. I didn't know if it would take us down the road of, back to the SMU days, the best team money could buy in that type of situation. By the way, very good 30 for 30, folks, was that SMU one, by the way. Did you see that one, Mark? Yeah, well done.
A few times.
But the Pony Express. Yeah, Eric Dickerson getting a Trans Am. That was funny. But, I think that I was always wondering if that would take us down that road. Now, I will say to the Jimbo Fisher situation, first of all, Jimbo Fisher's got a pretty good track record of recruiting really good talent, number one. I mean, the guy has won a national championship. He did recruit at a really high level at Florida State. His recruiting was ramping up at Texas A&M to begin with. We know that they gave him a ton of dough to come there. We know that they invest a lot of money into their program, which, I mean, those are both factual statements. Those aren't inaccurate statements. And then obviously we know he's got, last component and very important component is we know he's got the recruiting base and where he's at. So I'm not saying that this is like SMU and the best team money could buy. I do think his track record and the fact of where he's coaching at and the resources he's got to bear and all of those things have to be taken into consideration. And if you're going to tell me coming into the season that Texas A&M could have the number one recruiting class with all of those things at their disposal, I'm not surprised. Now, this is a pretty great recruiting class and taking a look at it, but when you take all those things into consideration, again, I'm not overly shocked that he would come up with this kind of class.
His 3 previous recruiting classes are ranked 6, 4, and 8. So,
okay,
top 6 to 7 in the country, 5 to 7
right.
in that range, 4 to 8, obviously, 4, 6, and 8. So this is not Ole Miss bringing in top 30 to 35 classes, and then all of a sudden, boom, they shoot to number 4 in the country under Hugh Freeze, and they had something like 4 or 5 position players that were the number 1 ranked players at their position sign with Ole Miss.
Right, yeah. Freeze's situation did seem dicey at the time, and obviously we later found out that it was. I guess that, obviously you could see why Texas A&M was trying to attract Fisher. I mean, he did have some success at Florida State, obviously won a national championship and, won some games with those Winston teams and actually even won the ACC the one year with Manuel as his quarterback, didn't he?
Yes.
Mark?
Yeah, they beat up on Northern Illinois in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, poor Northern Illinois had to take their butt whipping that year. That's true. So yeah, I mean, I could see why, obviously he was a draw for them and they gave him the bag to come there and coach. And again, like I said, I mean, that's the other thing with college football, Mark, is I always think that's a big factor, what you mentioned earlier, as far as you can see the programs that really want to win, as far as the money they invest in facilities, infrastructure, all of those things do matter. And they're a big part of the recruiting process. So, I don't think people should be surprised. I don't know. I'm not.
Here are my 3 big issues with NIL. Issue number 1 is that I would like there to be a rule in place similar to college athletes not being able to interact or hire an agent until they are ready to turn pro and have made that decision in a similar fashion that student athletes in high school cannot interact with an NIL source until they have signed and enrolled in school. So they have made a decision. Now, of course, there's going to be cheating, but if they're caught, it's going to be just like an NCAA violation that we've seen from the past, and make it egregious and make it the penalty harsh that a student athlete cannot have contact with booster/school in an NIL fashion before they have signed and enrolled to play at a particular school. Therefore, their decision to choose a particular school is not impacted by NIL. Now, they can gather information and say, okay, it's really lucrative to go to Ohio State, so I'm going to go there, but they cannot have a deal in place before they are a collegiate athlete. So that would be number 1. Number 2 would be the thing that I don't hear talked about that is mystifying to me is that if we take this all the way back to at least what I remember being the origin of this conversation, it was when Johnny Manziel was apparently caught signing autographs in Florida in the offseason in exchange for money or whatever he received. And the NCAA was very inconclusive with their stated findings there, but he got suspended for the first half of the game, and he, shows us the money sign and the whole deal. So at that point, I thought, okay, we've gotten to a point. Let's reward these players, allow them to be Americans just like everybody else, and they can benefit from their name, image, and likeness. Okay, here we are like 9 years later, and we've gotten to this point, but I'm not seeing the exchange for goods and services. I'm not seeing the Oklahoma quarterback and the Instagram posts that he's doing for said company. I'm not seeing the exchange. I'm not seeing the autographs that are being signed for $3 a pop or whatever. I'm not seeing the exchange of goods and services. This seems like all that it's gift money.
Yeah, the one thing that I was going to throw out there, Mark, and I kind of remember a couple of Ohio State situations that stick out in my mind as well. I think that the concern always with the NIL, and let me see if this was yours as well, and I'll also throw out the two Ohio State situations. Remember, I think a part of the Maurice Clarett situation in 2002 was a booster and a car dealership, if I'm not mistaken. Was it not,
yes.
Mark? Wasn't there something going on with that? And then obviously the other situation was the prior situation and the players with the exchanging tattoos for the memorabilia situation, which I think is now a joke. But and I know we've talked about that before. But I think just the bottom line situation that I think is the one concern, maybe to some people it's not a concern, is the dirty booster situation with NIL. Is that, oh, I'm a booster, I own a car dealership, or I own said company. It used to be in the day that they'd say that they'd get the student athlete to come there and work for said company on the side, and they wouldn't have to work, and they just, pay them not to work and give them some money. Don't you see that type of situation arising, or couldn't that be a type of situation that could also come to play with NIL?
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm not seeing evidence against that now. What is the exchange that we're seeing right now for the money that's being paid to these athletes? And we've only heard, and I'm not somebody that's digging into this. It really, to be honest, other than the impact that it has on the field and with the player acquisition and transfer, it doesn't interest me. But other than hearing about Quinn Ewers, Bryce Young, De'Ara King, Bo Nix, I haven't heard about that many other players. And what are they endorsing? What is their exchange, again, for the benefits they're receiving, the monetary benefits? What's the work provided? And of course, it's not going to be heavy lifting. We know that. It's going to be an Instagram post or whatever. But in today's day and age, that's what it is. I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, I guess, Mark, until we see like them doing some advertising for XYZ company and, the money coming in, we're not really going to have a read on this, right? Just bottom line.
The only example I heard like that, and this was the first day or two of NIL, was that Bo Nix was a spokesperson hired by some local lemonade company in Alabama or down south. But you would have thought, and I'm on Twitter all the time and on social media, you would have thought that there would be posts shared. You would think that this would have been common to everyone seeing this at some point. Okay, this is the Bo Nix ad. I didn't see anything. I still don't know the name of the company, but I never saw this materialize.
Right. Yeah, I tend to agree with you, Mark. Until we see bottom line situations of, advertising and, them doing these maybe commercial spots or what have you, and them getting the money and, obviously, some type of transactional type situation, that's obviously going to be when the rubber meets the road. And until we see that, I guess we won't know, right?
Yeah, I would think that they could at least do some of the things I'm suggesting. And I'm not saying that I'm a genius, and I'm not saying that I've thought it through and that there aren't hangups to some of the things I'm proposing, but they seem to be pretty reasonable. They still give a market and a demand for these athletes to go out there and make a lot of money, but it at least reins it in to a degree.
Right. And then the other thing is we don't have a governing body here, Mark. We don't have
exactly.
We don't have a competent NCAA with leadership at the top to do anything about this, to lay down guidelines and parameters and do anything like that. It's up to each individual, university and their compliance department and all that. Some way, what is that, like the fox watching the hen house type situation?
So, for example, David, to your point, I see this proposed all the time. Excuse me, and it makes sense on the surface that people have suggested, okay, there should be a salary cap. Well, it's not a salary; it's free market enterprise. So there's no cap on that. The only way to get to that situation would be that there would have to be a governing body, and all the schools would have to agree that we are now in business together. Therefore, there's going to be a salary cap.
Right. Yeah. Well, Mark, I don't think we should hold our breath on this one, my friend.
And not to belabor the point, but I don't even think that would work, because the reason there's a salary cap in major sports is because they basically, as you well know, say, this is our business model. If we make X number of dollars, we make $1 billion, we're giving 50% of that toward, to make the math easy, 50% of that toward the players union. Therefore, their salary cap is going to be based on how much money we make. Well, this money apparently is coming from outside of the universities, from the marketplace. Well, there's no cap on that. How can you put a cap on that?
Right. That's true. Yeah. Until you have somebody to put these guidelines in place, we're not going to be in a better place. So, all right, Mark. Well, as always, it's a pleasure to talk college football with you, my friend.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. Have a good night. Bryce Young is making somewhere between $800,000 and $1 million. What is he doing? What is he doing to earn that money? I'm not understanding that. All right. Very true, John. The salary cap is also a tool to help achieve parity between the teams. There, Mayan. So the suggestion I just had is not necessarily a suggestion. It's not the way I think it should go, but it's the way it could go. But I don't see that happening. There would have to be so much cooperation between the haves and the have-nots to put together an organization that governs all the way from Alabama all the way down to Rice, or even if the Power Five left, all the way from Alabama to Vanderbilt, to Kansas, to Oregon State, that I just don't think that they're going to, the level of cooperation and collaboration and agreement that would have to take place would be, the arbitrator for that would have to be a genius. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, man, it's Eric.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. What's on your mind?
Oh, man, so much. I don't know how much. You're obviously super busy, especially with signing day. But Oregon did this all-day event. If anyone cares about Oregon and the new coaching staff, they should go check it out.
We care about Oregon. Yes, we do.
Yeah. But Joey Mack, one of our journalists, sat down with every assistant coach and did, 5-10 minutes with every single one of them back to back to back to back. And it was super interesting meeting that staff. I'm really excited about them, the charisma, the youth movement that's there. Tosh LaPoy, absolutely killed the interview, came in a suit. That was great. So I'm still writing that. But what I was thinking of was this whole NFL draft debacle. Like, I've always had this argument with NFL versus college football with friends or whatever, but like, is it harder to recruit or is it harder to get your draft picks right? And which system is more fair, which is, such a nebulous term. You can't really define that, but I just want to know your thoughts on that. Like, where teams are literally, the conspiracy theory is real, right?
Well, to compare the NFL draft with recruiting, I think that it is exponentially easier to draft than it is to go sign high school players. Let's say, so the one big difference is that, of course, it's an open field and it's wide open for Alabama and Texas A&M and Clemson, et cetera, to go out and grab the best players, and there's no equity. It's not an equitable system, where the NFL draft is, of course, you take your turn. It's not like if we instituted that in college football, okay, UMass, you get the first pick of the 2023 college draft, and then UConn, you select number 2. In Alabama, they're selecting at 130, in Georgia at 129, et cetera. So it's a completely different process. Obviously, the haves can continue to stockpile the best talent. But from a scouting standpoint, I think it's so much tougher to go evaluate players starting at 15 years old, from 15 to 18 years old, when their bodies are changing constantly. Some of them peak early, some of them grow into their bodies. They mature mentally, physically, in all such ways. The formative years are such a bigger gap and more unpredictable between 15 and 18 to try to evaluate the talent. Plus, they're playing against all sorts of levels. You've got Bryce Young on a high school football field with 16-year-olds who, can barely, tie their shoes and run down the field. The levels of talent are so sporadic in high school football, versus if you've watched a player play in the SEC or the Big Ten for 3 years, and sure, there is still room for them to mature and grow and lift weights and become more of an NFL body, but still, they're playing at an extremely high level against like competition, and to be able to evaluate their ability that has not plateaued, but it's come very close to the ceiling versus what it was when they were 16, I think is so much more predictable. So I side with the NFL draft being so much more predictable. It should be. The evaluation of talent should be so much sharper than it is for the college scout looking at high school players.
Yeah. So in other words, I mean, as an NFL scout, you have more film, you have a more complete product. They're closer to being at their physical peak when they're 21, 22 than they are when they're 15, 16.
Yeah. 17. And beyond that, their knowledge of the game, their ability to just understand the game. It's just, yeah, they're a different person.
Yeah. So they're more of an adult, though not completely, but more so.
Sure.
Sure. Okay. I got 2 more things here. I guess on that note, like it's not a super serious argument for me, but it is something that I like to just bring up with other football fans, and it seems to always get a good reaction. But there are people that started calling Saban not only the best college football coach, but just like the best coach of all time. That came up I don't know if you saw it, but I saw a couple of pundits say things like that, like not only the best football coach, but the best coach, period. And think you point to like his recruiting and his culture and his influence on the game. Like whenever he says anything, people listen, and it's usually super insightful. But Saban versus Belichick, and I have NFL friends that'll tell me that Saban couldn't hang in the NFL, and he wasn't good enough to do it, and it's at a total different level. And I know that the NFL is more professional, and it is the highest level of sport. I do agree with that, but I mean, maybe it's just a stupid comparison. But if you had to, rank those two coaches, would you even do that?
I don't think it's a stupid comparison. I think it's intriguing. So you could certainly, for those NFL friends that you have who brag about Bill Belichick's record and that Nick Saban, quote unquote, failed with the Dolphins. I hear people talk about Nick Saban's 2-year run with the Dolphins like it was just this unmitigated disaster. Well, they were 7-9 and 8-8. They went 15-17. Those were his first 2 years with the Dolphins. Of course, we know that the reason coaches have new jobs in the NFL is because those teams aren't good. That's why they have a coaching vacancy. So he took over a fairly bad team, not a horrible team, and did not have a quarterback. And he went 15-17. So I give him an incomplete. Also, you need to point them to Bill Belichick, not with the New England Patriots. You need to liken Saban's NFL record to Belichick's record with the Cleveland Browns. That was his first NFL job. And it wasn't anything remarkable by any stretch. It was under 500. So if they want to argue Belichick versus Saban from that standpoint.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, the most intuitive example, I don't know how it stands up, but just in my head, Saban has to, like, yes, he has recruiting advantages at Alabama, but largely they're advantages that he's built himself. They're the consequences of him being as good as he is. So, but he has to bring in a new team every year, and he has new coordinators every year. Like, I think that just speaks to his system and whatever it is he's doing. I mean, versus, how Belichick had Brady for how many years, and how much of his success was because of that.
Yes.
Like, he doesn't have to rebuild every year.
To defend Belichick, and so I'm going to take the other side of the argument. There's no comparison between the competition that they have to face. And I'm not just saying one's pro and one's college, but the competition talent level versus their talent level. So how many games does Alabama play a year where they're playing comparable talent? 2 or 3?
Like 3, yeah.
Yes, whatever it is. Probably none in some years that are as talented, but, within range. About 3 teams, your LSU game, your Florida game, your Georgia game, whatever, whoever it is that year. Where Belichick, he's facing comparable talent every week.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so final point. I really do. I really love all the hype that USC is getting. I really genuinely want them to be good. That's going to come off as sarcasm maybe from a Ducks fan, but I really want it. I want them to make the conference better. I want us to have a steady rival in the South recruiting. I want all of that. Lincoln versus Lanning, like their staff, what they're doing. What's going on there? Because, I mean, Lincoln's getting more of the hype. I understand. But I, of course, biased. But Lanning, man, the staff's been great. We've put in a lot. Finished in the top 25 when we were at, I think, 60 after Mario left, and a record number of decommitments. And we really kind of put the pieces together, flipped a running back from Georgia, got some good corners. What do you think about that rivalry moving forward?
Well, it's been a rivalry in the past, and certainly it's setting up as the 2 dominant programs in the conference. So I think it's setting up to be exciting. And to your point, like I have no rooting interest for the Pac-12 or for any particular schools in the Pac-12, but I want the Pac-12 to be good. I don't want half of the country to be shut down. I do not want college football to be non-existent, west of Oklahoma. And I remember, and I grew up with the Pac-12 being just as good as any other conference. There was no distinction that, the Pac-12 is no good. No, they were just as good as every other conference in the country, if not better, in some seasons. So I want the Pac-12 to be good, and the conference doesn't all need to elevate. Sometimes that's the byproduct of really strong programs and strong coaches, is that the other programs kind of kick in, but they do need two, I'll use the term, dominant programs. So if USC and Oregon can be those two, and then, two top 10, legitimate top 10 programs, and then it's good to have a layer like a Wisconsin, Penn State layer of, top 15 to 20 teams, a couple of those to make it look like, okay, there's not just one school beating down the rest of the division. And, UCLA would be that candidate, in Washington and Arizona State, Utah, of course. But USC and Oregon, it hopefully turns into something.
Yeah, I really like that you, as a Ohio State Big Ten guy, Penn State and Wisconsin are your cushion team. I like that term. I feel like that's what Washington and Oregon State, and less so Oregon State, but they're getting better. But definitely Washington and USC, UCLA have been for us lately. And just one little follow up. The Pac-12. I'm voracious with college football content and Instagram on here. I know what people say about the Pac-12, and I know that the O stands for zero national championships. I know. But is the perception, like, nationally? I'm in Eugene, so it's kind of in a bubble. But perception nationally is that there's one really good Pac-12 team, or is it two? Like, I know it's bad, but is Oregon the only one getting respect nationally? I know now things are changing, but let's say in the last couple of years.
Okay. Do you want the honest truth? The
very
brutal truth.
The joke too. Give me the brutal truth. Is it one? Is it zero?
I would say that we've got very knowledgeable and very ardent college football fans here mid-February, early February, on a college football show, at 10 o'clock at night, so Eastern time. So I think most of them would tell you that there are no good teams in the Pac-12.
Okay, zero.
Now, it depends on my question when I'm posed with a topic like that is, okay, what do you consider good? Okay, what I consider good is that you're a top 15 to 20 team in the country. Now, this past season,
can you put up
season, I would put Utah and Oregon in that range.
Okay. Can you put up a poll of like 1 or 2 or 3 or 0 or some shit? Excuse me.
Sure, I can. I can put up a poll on our community page. Sure.
Can't you put a poll in the chat or like a comment?
I don't know if I can or not. I never have.
Okay.
So yeah. I'll just say this. This will be my closing comment on the Pac-12, and then you can finish from here. The Pac-12 went 3-16 against the rest of the Power Five. And the Pac-12 also went 7-6 against the Group of Five, which doesn't seem like a big deal or that bad, but that's bad. Like the Big Ten went 18-3 against the Group of Five. The SEC went, I don't remember the number, 21-2 against the Group 5, whatever it was. That's what most conferences do against a Group of 5. And then to go 3-16 against your peers, This, I believe, was the worst season of Pac-12 football ever.
Yeah, it may have been. And that's again what I was speaking to. That's the perception. And I was wondering if in the national mind of college football, if that was the perception, with the idea that there is one or two exceptions. You know, we all have the stereotype. Yeah, if you look at it as a conference, obviously, like, I mean, how bad is Arizona? Almost had like back-to-back 0-win seasons, right? Like, I mean, it's really bad. Though they had a really good recruiting class. But I appreciate your time, Mark. I will let somebody else get on the line.
Thank you so much for the call. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Yep.
All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
No, man. See, Mark, first-time caller.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. I called in just because I really liked the last two callers talking about coaching and coaches, and I think in the off season that'd be really good if people would talk about that. I think it's really interesting. Appreciate your input on Saban. When he was at Michigan State, his wife really enjoyed the college atmosphere, and I enjoy pro sports. But like you, I think college is a much more interesting and fruitful sporting area. And I hope people know that when Saban was in the NFL, the major reason he went to Alabama was that his wife just enjoyed the community of the college community in Michigan State, and she wanted to return to that. In fact, when he was introduced at Alabama, the athletic director's first move was to thank his wife right off the top, which is pretty classy, but there's a lot of truth to that.
Yep.
He meant that she played a part. And so I hear it once about Saban and NFL and compare them. So I really appreciate your comments on that. I guess I have a question for you so you could run the side of the conversation. Because you know the Big Ten so well, and being an old Fran Tarkington fan, that made me a hell of a fan of you. But that means we're not young. But
no, we're not.
But I guess but we live longer nowadays, so there's hope. When you look at the divisions in the Big Ten, and you look to rate the coaches on the two divisions, who do you admire or you respect, or you can spin it any way you want? Give me three coaches in both sides of the Big Ten and talk about them a little bit. I'll just shut up and listen to your answer.
Let's start with my guy, Pat Fitzgerald. So I think we were all pretty familiar with the limitations at Northwestern. And I just think he's been a master at instilling a program there that is based on toughness and discipline and execution and hard work and doing your job and showing up and believing you can, if you all pull together and do the right things, that you can beat more talented teams. Now, sometimes the talent gap rears its ugly head, as it did this year and seemingly has every other year for the last few years. But for him to be able to go to the Big Ten championship game twice in 3 years, I think speaks volumes of his coaching ability. And I always thought beyond that he's a tremendous representative of the university and college football, and presents himself in such a way as a class act. PJ Fleck is a bit more of a wild card. You're going to get, if we polled the folks watching and other college football fans, I think he would get more in line opinion of Pat Fitzgerald. Even if people didn't think he was as good a coach as I do, they would still have respect for him. PJ Fleck certainly has, if you don't like him, he's been termed a car salesman. But I have found that based on the people that I talk to, people that have interviewed him, based on the documentary that I saw on the Big Ten Network, which followed him around for an off season, that the guy is just a ball of fire and just full of energy, full of optimism, full of hope. Some of it might seem very corny, but it seems to be genuine. So I do like PJ Fleck, and I'm interested to see how far he can elevate the Minnesota program, not trying to place too high of expectations on it, because I think he's close to where he can take that program because of where they're located. I'll point out another coach that I generally have very high regard for, but I do have some criticisms of him, especially recently in the Big Ten West, and that would be Kirk Ferentz. So he took over the job in 1999, and Hayden Fry had done obviously a remarkable job at Iowa for the most part, but the tail end of his tenure at Iowa was not pretty. Kirk Ferentz went 1-10 his first year, and within 2 years, they're playing for a Big Ten championship. They're going to the Orange Bowl, and his first 4 or 5 years were exceptional. I think they finished in the top 10 3 times in his first 5 years. Then they leveled off and have seemingly, at least when I hear him speak about projections of his team and their goals, it doesn't seem as though he really wants to elevate. Like, he wants to be good. He wants to be solid. He is almost held too true to his tenets of defense and special teams. He's had an offense for the past decade that is consistently ranked lower than 100 in the nation by all the metrics, not just pointing out one particular metric, but by the traditional stats and the advanced metrics. Deplorable offensive football, and he doesn't seem to want to do anything about it. He's employing his son as the offensive coordinator, and I just don't like the mentality of this is who we are and this is what we do, and let's not evolve and try to be better than that. But I have tremendous respect for his longevity, his character, his ability to game plan, develop offensive linemen and tight ends, of course, for the NFL. People would be surprised that Iowa ranks in the top 5 or 6 of NFL players currently on professional rosters. So that's my take on the Big Ten Western Division. Maybe I need to be a little bit expedient on my analysis of the Big Ten East. I'm sure people are maybe growing bored of this, but wow, where do I go in the East? Because the two obvious guys we talk about all the time, Harbaugh and Day. Tom Allen is a interesting guy. So he just brought in a top 20 class at Indiana coming off a winless Big Ten season. He is, I say this with all respect and admiration, he's a nut. He loves what he's doing. He loves the student athletes. He mixes it up with them. He's in the stands high-fiving fans. I've seen him do victory laps in Bloomington where he's practically falling on his face because he's trying to climb the wall so high to hug and embrace and high-five fans. I don't know if he's got the resources and the wherewithal to get it done at Indiana, but he certainly had 2 nice seasons prior to this last one. So it's going to be critical to see whether he's able to rebound from that and continue Indiana football in a positive trajectory. I think Mike Locksley at Maryland is an interesting case as well, in that I was not in favor of his hire. I don't know how you go 3-31 at New Mexico State and have 2 fairly serious off-field issues, one in which caused a suspension, and that places you in a place where you've earned a Big Ten head coaching position. And here we are a few seasons later, and I think the jury's still out on him because Maryland is now a football program that is going to win its cupcake non-conference scheduled games and is going to beat a few teams in the Big Ten and is going to reach that, or at least they did this year for the first time, I believe, in 7 years, a bowl game. But they have an opportunity at Maryland if he's able to lock into the DMV to build a pretty special program. They always have a couple elite athletes at wide receiver, at defensive back that move on to the NFL, but they don't consistently take advantage and recruit that area and develop line play. So they just get mauled by the big boys in the Big Ten. And I'll finish off with James Franklin. He was just given this amazing contract extension, even though he's 11-11 the last 2 years at Penn State. And he just brought in a top 6 recruiting class. And maybe he finally nabbed the quarterback that can be a true stud franchise elite quarterback in Drew Aller from Medina, Ohio, because he's had 3 gamers is what he's had. Well, I will say 2 gamers. The last 2 guys, Sean Clifford proved a ton to me last season. He was injured, battered, bruised, and he just continued to go out there and play. I don't think he's an exceptional quarterback, but I think he's a top 4 or 5 quarterback in the league. And but he showed me a ton of toughness. We know what Trace McSorley was, a baller, a gamer. Christian Hackenberg was a first-round potential who fizzled. But he may finally get the quarterback that he needs to elevate the program to truly challenge Ohio State. But James Franklin, interesting trajectory that he had 2 disappointing years to start at 7-6. Was in a bad place at 1-2 his 3rd season. Then they had the miracle run to the Rose Bowl, and he really had Penn State in a good place there for 3 or 4 years. The only challenger to Ohio State. Now, a bit of a crossroads, and it's interesting that they have gone all in to give him that kind of contract extension to keep him away from the likes of where he was rumored to go, USC, LSU, and Florida, and otherwise. So, yes, James Franklin, great recruiting class, but he's got to stack those to be able to challenge Ohio State.
I really enjoyed your summary of the coaches. I too mimic your respect for the Northwestern head coach, the Indiana head coach. You know, you kind of covered personalities of character and characters themselves. I can't speak to PJ Fleck's character, but he is a character. And I really hope things go well. I'm an Iowa Hawkeye graduate, so you know who I root for, but I wish the Northwestern head coach well. It'll be interesting to see in Illinois what Bielema will do to getting players. And they got new facilities at Northwestern, and I know he's of character. If anybody who watch his post-game press conferences, he's got a little bit of both. He's got character, but he's very enjoyable to watch post-game. And of course, he played for Northwestern, I think, as a linebacker. I just have to say a little bit about Kirk Ferentz, and he has a lot of character. And I think the thing that some Iowa fans that are a little older remember the character, and of course he had a lot of character, was Hayden Fry, and he's kind of off the Belichick. I don't know if he learned it from Belichick or he's naturally that way from being a Pennsylvania native, but he's kind of, he's steady Eddie. He tries humor and it's all right, but it's not to Hayden's level. And I don't think anybody could have followed Hayden except Bobby Stoops or Mark Stoops. Probably only Bobby could have followed Hayden and got away with it as far as personality. So I appreciate your rundown of the Big Ten coaches. And I'm glad you said that about the Pac-12 conference. I think college football would be lifted to, like you said, get the western half of the United States involved. And I can't help but go back when Lute Olson went to Arizona, basketball program on its back. He had early ties to North Dakota, Iowa, Southern California basketball. He went to Arizona. Somebody asked him why he went there. He said, well, you ever lived through winters in the upper Midwest, which we're all going through, probably especially Mark Rogers in Ohio. But look what happened to Arizona in basketball. And I would like to see USC or Oregon continue, and that's gonna help us evaluate coast-to-coast college programs. So with that, I'll let you continue with your program.
All right, sir. Well, very good. I appreciate the call tonight. Call back anytime.
I just saw a comment about Francis a dinosaur. I think a lot of programs would take his performance at Iowa, and that's nothing to sneeze at. And I'll say good night.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, and have a good night.
Night.
The one thing I'll say about Kirk Ferentz, again, just to extend on my one point about the offense, is these quarterbacks are flying all over the country. Keaton Slovis and Jackson Dart and Casey Thompson, and we could go on and on with all these quarterbacks flying all over the country. Iowa has bottom 3 to 4 quarterback play in the conference. Why did they not get a transfer quarterback? Wisconsin has Graham Mertz, not a great quarterback, but great talent, and they still did everything they could to get Caleb Williams. All right. Welcome into the voice of college football. Let's take, should this be our last call of the night? Right here, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hi, Anthony.
Anthony, what's going on?
Hey, Mark, I wanted to talk about Harbaugh a little bit and a little bit about Ohio State, but I just want to mirror your comment about the Drew Eller kid. I saw him playing in high school. I'm from Buckeye State like you are with Ohio State, but I saw that kid. That's the Quinn Ewers, the gift keeps on giving. He reclassed and really took our chance away to, get Drew Aller because, and then of course he leaves and then, Drew Aller, I think he may have been gettable. But obviously Ewers there, we did see a clear path to the field, but I don't know. I think Drew Aller actually, I've seen a couple of those on TV, the Elite 11 competitions. I think Drew Aller outplayed him. I think Devin Brown, the kid we got too, outplayed him. But Drew Aller, you're right. Drew Aller is a pretty fly. I'm much more worried about Penn State going forward with Drew Aller than I do J.J. McCarthy in Michigan. I'm not sure what your take is on that, but I think the Aller kid is the real deal. So I think he's going to be playing on Sunday, and kind of Joe Burrow-esque a little bit, kind of the way he looks. So.
Yeah, I don't have any opinion on high school athletes other than their recruiting rankings. So if 247 Sports and ESPN and Rivals say that so-and-so is the best quarterback in the country or the 5th best edge rusher in the country, I take their word for it until I see them on the field. I'm not here scouting high school tapes. I don't have time to, nor would I care to watch huddle tapes of all these players in high school. So I take them for what the recruiting rankings tell me. And in addition to that, in the conversations that I have with, for example, Penn State writers, then I ask them, okay, you've looked at this recruiting class, you've looked at the various people. So based on what you've watched and you've read and who you've talked to, who stands out above their recruiting ranking or may fall short of their ranking. But I don't have any opinion myself on Drew Aller other than, as I stated a few minutes ago, that if he's as good as people say he is, then maybe Penn State's finally found that level of quarterback. I don't know when the last time they had that level of quarterback, probably Todd Blackledge.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, I mean, Blackledge was good. Yeah, I mean, Joe Paterno definitely didn't draw great, got great results, obviously, over the long haul, but he definitely didn't pull, dynamic offenses, but, I kind of want to talk about Harbaugh real quick. I think that just, that man, that whole situation, it just shows the kind of decay of the Michigan program. I mean, they had a great season this year. I don't want to, derate that. They beat, my team convincingly. So and they obviously, got completely outclassed by Georgia, but, most people did. But I don't know. I think that whole, it's like a bad politician, a bad political drama, or, a bad, New York play or something playing out up there. It's just like, I grew up in the Northeast Ohio area, and, my dad, almost played for Ohio State. So, I mean, we lived and died by the game, and, kind of lived all that through the, 80s and 90s. Went to school in the 90s there. So, was, on the wrong side of the rivalry quite a bit. So, but I just think that it's become a joke, and, letting Harbaugh come back. And I don't know what your take is on that whole thing. It's just like, it just seems like, that's almost like a microcosm of the whole, Michigan program at this point. What's going on there? Really, it just shows you the weakness that's systemic all through that entire program. So that's what I think. I mean, I was wondering what your take was.
Well, I don't think it's a step in the right direction, what he just did for the last 4 to 5 weeks. I would have given him a time limit. I would have allowed him to explore his options for a few weeks, but the NFL season was over the first week of January. So I just don't think that I don't think he conducted himself well in knowing what it would look like to Michigan Nation. And I don't think the AD Ward Manual put the type of restrictions on him to protect the reputation of the program and the goodwill to the fan base and the players and the other coaches. When Jim Harbaugh just leaves for a week and gives a message to the coaching staff that, hey, you do what you need to do, he was basically giving a message, I believe, as I read it, that I'm probably going to be out of here. If you have other opportunities, you do what you need to do. So yeah, it was not handled well. Now, do I believe Michigan's going to come apart at the seams? No, they have too much money, too many resources. It's too good a school. They're going to, and he's still there, and he did try to make amends in such a way that if you believe him, then he's there to stay. Time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, what do you think if he has a typical Harbaugh year? I mean, or typical Michigan year. I mean, Michigan's been this way. Michigan, I believe you are what your record says you are. I mean, I know there's been some argument about winning and relevance of winning and things like that. I've seen, but winning is everything in college football. I think. I mean, that's everything's measured by your record. So, should we go back to a typical? What happens if you've got a typical? Michigan year. He's got 9 wins, 10 wins. He loses to Michigan State or he loses to Penn State. Comes down here and he gets blasted. I'm going to be there for that game. I can't wait. Brian Day, hangs his mythical 100 on him, or at least maybe hangs half of that. With this, especially with this, he's losing his defensive coordinator. Jabo's gone. Hill's gone. Aiden Hutchinson's gone. Defense. He hasn't anything in the transfer portal at all. He's got more 3-stars, than Ohio State's had in the last 3 years in the last 2 recruiting classes. So there's like no help coming. He's late to the party. I mean, what happens then? I mean, what happens in his typical Harbaugh year? Do you think he stays, or they, they're going to, ride him the next 7 years again? Or I don't know. I just wonder what the future is if he has 2 more typical Harbaugh years, which is, 10 up, 9 up, and then, but gets blasted by Ohio State or loses to Michigan State.
Well, I give all due credit to Jim Harbaugh for what he accomplished this season. He finally beat Ohio State, won the Big Ten championship, got to the playoff. Those are tremendous accomplishments, and he broke down a barrier. Now, we don't know if that's an aberration. So there are other rivalries across the country where one team dominates the other. Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Alabama, Auburn, Oregon, Oregon State. That doesn't mean that they win every year. So we just had this tremendous streak with Ohio State beating Michigan. So this could just be an aberration. It kind of looks like an aberration. Not that Michigan's not going to have a good team and a good program and lose to Ohio State, 15 out of 16 years going forward. But they still look like decidedly the program in second place. So while a lot of credit needs to be given to him to face the odds that he was and to accomplish what he did this year, he's done this now one time in 7 years. And that overall shouldn't be hailed as some kind of great coaching record. You should win a Big Ten championship in 7 years at Michigan. You should win 2 or 3 if you're holding yourselves to the standard of what has been the standard since Bo Schembechler walked on campus. He would have 3 or 4 Big Ten championships in 7 years. So I don't think he's accomplished anything great overall. So for this season, I think that if I'm making the judgment, yes, your record is first and foremost. That's where we start. What was your record? Okay, you were 10-2. Okay, you were 8-4, whatever. But then I put it into context. And this season is a very easy season for Michigan non-conference. They're going to automatically win 3 games right there. They don't play anyone. And the conference schedule, I believe, is a little lighter than it usually is. So to your point, if they run through 9 games and they beat a couple decent teams, but Michigan State beats them, Ohio State blasts them, and there's some other, I think they've got Iowa on the road, they lose that game. And it's basically this look of, okay, you beat the bad teams, you can't compete with the good teams. I think he should be done. I would get rid of him, especially after the stunt that he pulled in the last month.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, and I think like most Ohio State fans, we don't want Michigan to beat us, but we want Michigan to be a solid team because you want the league to be solid and always that it's always kind of the most eyes on that game. I still think than any other game in college football, and and to have that Michigan being good is I think is important to Ohio State and to our league. So I'm not one of those people who think that Michigan should be a bottom feeder, but yeah, I just to me, like I said, I can't watching. I've always had a certain level of respect for the Michigan program, and I even did a camp up there once when I played in high school football, and was just super impressed with their facilities and things like that, which we got to see and tour. And so I've always had a lot of respect for it. So it just seems like Harbaugh is doing more harm than good, and but I don't know. I mean, I've heard so much that he had a bad relationship with the ex-president that's been forced out, and that him and Ward Manuel are buddies that go back for a while, and then other people say he got a good relationship with the program. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if what they do. If they can do it like you brought up with the last call, James Franklin like deal with a high buyout, or they just see what he kind of pat and see what they do, what he does for the next year or two, and and move forward from there. So, but that's all I had, Mark. Thanks so much for the call.
Thank you so much. Call back anytime.
Thanks.
All right, let's take these last 2 calls here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Hello? Okay. We will move on from there. We will take this call. Here we go. Thank you for calling the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, man, what's up?
Not too much. Who am I talking to?
You're talking to Eric again.
Eric, what's going on?
Nothing. Just something crossed my mind during your last caller. He inspired me. And I just thought, I love these in the off season. You get a little bit creative, right? Like, what program that's elite right now could just take a cliff dive? I mean, Clemson maybe kind of started that. Like, if they had a losing season this year, maybe we could classify them in that category. But let's say Nick retires and Alabama gets to hire wrong, for example. But what program is what top tier program, whatever, however you want to classify that, top 15 program is like could be most prone to a cliff dive.
Well, I guess we're watching it with Auburn right now. So there's one.
Oh,
cliff dive. So Texas is already
what would
there.
be the most dramatic one? I mean, just take it anywhere you want. It just occurred to me.
Well,
like if Ryan Day left for the Bears and like Kerry Coombs was your head coach.
Yeah, well, that's yeah. Kerry Combs couldn't even stay
like
on the
what
defensive
one
staff.
would like
So
it would just,
yeah, I don't see Ohio State
just
going
ruin
anywhere.
the world.
Top 15 programs. Well, yeah, we see a number of them already mired in mediocrity. LSU, Florida, Texas, Auburn's there, Florida State, USC. So there's only so many that are, wow, top 15. I think Notre Dame's in good hands. I guess Penn State, they haven't been, I consider Penn State a top 15 program, but they haven't played top 15 football the last 2 years.
What about Clemson?
What
do you think? What are they doing this season?
I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they've got a tremendous team.
Okay, so they go 7-5 next year or whatever.
Are you asking me if Clemson's going to go 7-5, or are you asking me saying if they go 7-5?
Yeah, Clemson.
No, Clemson's not going 7-5 next year.
What are they? What are they going?
Clemson, they've got a game against Notre Dame and South Carolina non-conference. I'm saying that they go 10-2 minimum.
Minimum.
Yeah.
What makes you so confident in the program? I mean, I'm not a Clemson detractor necessarily, but I know there's been upheaval. They lost both of their coordinators, if I'm not mistaken. What's different next year? Also, their quarterback, DJ. I don't know what's going on with that guy.
Yeah, so my confidence comes with Dabo. My confidence comes with the defense is going to be a top 3 to 5 defense in the country. And we'll see if DJ gets better.
Without Venables.
Yeah, I think the defense is going to be phenomenal. I think it was phenomenal last year. Their defense was great. They gave up 3 points to Georgia. Think about that.
Yeah, but that was with Venables, who's now gone.
Sure, he's gone. He is gone. You're right.
Who's their new DC?
They had one of the best defenses in the country, and they were playing like on one leg collectively.
Okay.
Call me back sometime, Eric. You already called tonight, so we've got a rule: 1 call per night.
Yeah.
So thanks for the call.
Thanks, Mark.
All right. I guess this will be the last call. I think that was 4 calls ago. Welcome into Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Yeah, hey, Mark. It's Tim from Field Beach, California. How you doing?
I'm good, Tim. How you doing?
I'm good. Just took my beating the other day, and the USC contributor you have for me. You guys I made the comment about Big 12 bad, which I do take from the Raina Troy people, because I do kind of get that whole line on it. And I went back myself and looked. And what metric are you using as far as stats, as far as like the difference between, I would say, Pac-12, which I'm going to tell you right away, I know Pac-12 defense has been trash in general, but ASU and Cal, Utah, those are pretty solid defenses. I wouldn't say they're some of the worst offenses around, but and even Oregon most years. I'm looking at once you get past Oklahoma State, Baylor, and Iowa State, what defenses in the Big 12 would Riley be running from?
Okay, so let's go back to the origin of this comment. Are you referring to a comment I made that the Big 12 is no longer just a pass-happy scoring conference and that people need to catch up with 2022, 2021, and not 2015, 16, 17?
That's what your contributor turned my comment into. I just simply said mine started out with the fact that I don't see a lot of great defense in the Big 12. You know what I mean? I see a couple good teams.
I don't think
pretty solid.
I don't see great defenses in any conference in the nation. You just named 30% of the conference. So there's only 10 teams, and you said 3 have great defense. So that is 30%. Yes, I wouldn't say great either.
I'd say Baylor had a great defense this year. And there's no question, Aranda's awesome. I mean, everyone talked about defensive coordinators. He's way up there. I get that. But the rest of the conference, and then, you know, I said Iowa State. I wouldn't call them a great defense. Iowa State.
Well, I wouldn't either. Defense. Baylor and Oklahoma State had top 10 defenses in the country. I don't know what the statistics say, but they had 2 of the roughly 10 best defenses in the country. Now, let's get besides all that. Let me just make this point. The only point that I made in that conversation was, and I hear this all the time because people get into stereotypes and they don't break free from them and keep up with where we are currently. People are locked into this narrative that the Big 12 doesn't play defense and the scores are 52-48 all over the place. I challenge anybody to take all the scores in every Power 5 conference, just the scores. Take the names away from the scores, just the scores. You would not be able to determine which set of scores is the Big 12. The scoring is not any more prolific in the Big 12 than anywhere else. They all look the same. They are playing a scoring average that's similar to the other 4 conferences. So this scoring average in the Big 12 has completely, Texas Tech that was scoring 50, 55, 60 points a game and giving up those kind of numbers 4 or 5 years ago is not today. West Virginia is not doing that today. The scores of the last 3 Big 12 championship games have all been in the teens and 20s.
Yeah, that comment you did make, I mean, everything you just said is spot on. And
yeah, that's all I said.
I'm not questioning the knowledge of the voice of college football. But what my comment got twisted around to the point where I made an off-cuff comment. Sure. I do know that it's not, but I mean that
I don't even know what your comment was. What was your comment? I'm sorry for interrupting. I just want to know what your comment is or was.
Yeah, my comment, I made the off-color comment about, you know, I said, "Oh, Big 12 bad," in response to, I'm sorry, I forget his name. Is it the guy from Trojan Wire?
Matt.
It was really a comment back towards him. He was making it sound like it was going to be a lot easier for Lincoln Riley's offense, which I think scored like 40 points a game almost in the Big 12 this year. But I mean, he was with a true freshman quarterback. He made the comment that Lincoln Riley is going to be a lot easier for Lincoln Riley moving over to the Pac-12 because the Pac-12 defenses. He's kind of like he's getting away from this juggernaut of. I said the juggernaut of. That's what I said. The juggernaut of Big 12 defenses. And I'm just not seeing it. You know. So when he made that comment, I made the off-color comment. I didn't mean it. I just like off-the-cuff comment about being Big 12 bad. Yeah, I totally get your point that the defense is it has changed.
So I'm not saying the defenses are great. I'm just saying the scoring has been normalized in the conference. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, my issue is with his comment. His comment was saying that it's going to be easier for Riley's offense to, again, I don't know what it was. Yeah. It wasn't exactly struggling in the Big 12.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But I mean, he's saying it would be easier in the Pac-12 than it was in the Big 12, which just struck a really weird chord with me because, again, there's some good defenses in the Pac-12.
Yeah, I understand.
You do have
Utah,
you do have Arizona. Arizona State, I mean.
So I know that his comment had 2 points to it. The one that you're making is that he believes that the defenses in the Big 12 are decidedly better than the defenses in the Pac-12. So you're right. He was making that comment. I also know that he was also saying that the quarterback play has deteriorated and declined so much in the Pac-12 that Caleb Williams, in comparison, is going to look like a better quarterback against the quarterback play in the Pac-12, which it has taken a huge drop in recent years. If you look at the quarterback play across the conference compared to what it typically is, which I know I'm going back ages, but I'm used to the Pac-12 having the best quarterback play in college football. Now that's going back a long way, but it wasn't good compared to the other conferences this past season.
Yeah, I guess compared to what used to be, but it was leaps and bounds better back in the day. And then we have been losing our talent everywhere else. But,
yeah,
it's not too far back to Herbert, when he was up at Oregon.
Sure.
It's not too far back to Darnold when Darnold was playing. That's like, 5 years ago? So it's not like years ago where SC and Oregon
Absolutely.
and schools.
Yeah.
I mean, I forgot, I'm blanking on his name, but the guy over at Utah, I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. He's balling out.
Richard
it's
Huntley.
not like the quarterback play is
Tyler
disappeared. Oh, no, just this past year.
Cam Rising.
Worst haircut in football. Yeah, Rising. Yeah, I mean, he, just the quarterback play isn't what it has been, but it's not like taking a huge back seat to other conferences in general, But anyway, I get your point. When I responded to him, it was just kind of the point that, I'm just drawing a blank on who are these Big 12, how it's going to get any easier for him going to the Pac-12 compared to the Big. Now, if you said the SEC, I get that comment, or even, some of the defenses in the Big 10, I get that as well. But to say that it's going to get easier going to the Pac-12 from the Big 12, I was like, dude, come on, really? Are you kidding me? What are we talking here?
So do you think that the Big 12 is better than the Pac-12 overall? Not talking about defense, just overall.
This year, in the past 2 years, yeah. But we're not too far removed from people burying the Big 12 as a dead conference.
True.
I do like what Aranda's doing. He did a great job. But see, and then the problem is Oklahoma State just lost their DC to you guys. So, I mean, that might be a big step back for them. I just don't see they're losing, they're losing Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, once they go, what they're getting back, I would say overall this year, absolutely. I don't think there's any conference that was worse than the Pac-12 this year. But anybody just to think that this is what the Pac-12 is, they've been down for a couple of years, but it wasn't too long ago the Pac-12 was doing fine. I mean, think of it this way. One thing I was thinking the other day, we've had two teams make appearances in the playoffs, and I believe Oregon didn't. They won. They went to the championship game, so they've won. I mean, has the Big 12 even ever won a playoff game?
No.
Outside of Oklahoma, has any other Big 12 team ever made the playoffs?
No.
We have Florida State and Clemson, mainly Clemson. What has the ACC done in the playoffs? So it's really just been pretty top heavy when it comes to the best talent. And a caller earlier said, and I do have an vested interest in, I'm glad the Pac-12. I think Lanning and especially with Tosh Dupuy, those two guys recruiting up at Oregon, and then talk about NIL, throw that in there. They'll be fine. And I know USC will, given the right coach, historically, USC with a decent coach is going to win. USC's been self-inflicted wounds. Well, the NCAA kneecapped us. And then after that, after the NCAA kneecap, Pat Hayden and Lynn Swann did their best to grind that, to just destroy USC football. And it'll be interesting. I'm not guaranteeing championships or playoffs, but I'll tell you what, Lincoln Riley and his ability to recruit and his recruiters in Southern California, I mean, Helton was getting top 10 classes. Helton got a top 6 class last year. Riley's already loading up already. I think it's going to balance out the country. I think a lot of these players that were going to Georgia and Ohio State and Alabama out of South Florida and Southern California, it's going to slow it down. And it's going to make it so it's not so top heavy. It's not going to be 4 or 5 teams. I mean, Clemson, let's get after the Clemson. That program's coaching staff's been gutted. So I think that it's going to flatten out across the board. Strong USC, strong Miami, strong Oregon will go a long way to make, things level out a little bit.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate the call. It's nice to get a Pac-12 call, somebody defending the Pac-12. I like to know that there's some interest out there.
I'm not defending this year.
Absolutely.
defending this
I
year.
get it.
There's
No,
no
no, I
defense for
mean, you're just defending, meaning from the standpoint that, you're not blind by any stretch. You're a knowledgeable guy on Pac-12 football, but I like to hear a little fight out of the Pac-12 and that there are serious fans out there. I like that.
There's some SC fans lurking. I've seen them in your chat. So they're out there. It's just maybe they need something to fight for.
That's
I
right.
just got to remind them that the dark days are gone. I'm not saying we're winning championships, but we're not going to be 4-8. I mean,
Yep.
Think about it. USC hasn't gone like negative like that since Paul Hackett. Probably 2 times the past 30, 40 years, SC's had losing seasons, and
Sure.
hopefully those days are behind us.
All right, man. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark. Take care.
All right. Excellent calls tonight. Yes, I want the Pac-12 to be relevant. We make fun of the Pac-12 on here. I don't make fun of the Pac-12 because I've got some vendetta against the Pac-12, just like I don't make fun of the ACC just for the hell of it. I make fun of the ACC now because it's a pretty bad conference, but the Pac-12's even worse. And I was touting the ACC after the 2016 season because if you look back, it wasn't necessarily the best conference, I don't believe, but it played better. There's a difference. The results were better than any conference in the country. So I applauded the ACC that particular year. So I try to keep it neutral. We try to stick to the facts, of course. And I would love to see relevant football. The Pac-12 this past season, I've laid out the numbers and they're horrible. If Oregon had not beaten Ohio State, that saved the Pac-12 and just kept it somewhat on the map for the entire season. Oregon beating Ohio State, that kept Oregon in the race up until the last couple of weeks. And that's the only reason anyone paid attention or talked about the Pac-12. Of course, I'm exaggerating. There were some of us. Every team in the Pac-12 could be 6-6, and I would still pay attention and still watch. But I'm an outlier. I'm a knucklehead. I will watch the Pac-12 regardless. But I'm talking about the attention of the nation only stayed on Oregon in the Pac-12 because they won the Ohio State game. Otherwise, man, it would have been a completely lost season from week 2 on for the Pac-12. All right. Appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. And wanted to note to Eric and others who love Oregon football that we've had 2 tremendous Oregon conversations the last 2 days. One has yet to be posted, but go over to the Oregon channel, or I'm actually going to combine those 2 conversations with Ryan Winter and Eric Scopel of 247 Sports and put them together as one big Oregon discussion because they were tremendous. Appreciate you being here. And of course, I am collecting information on who roots for who. So what I would like to know is who you root for. So hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. There it is right there. So of course we would love to get a sponsor. But in addition to that, let me know who you root for. Send me an email at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. The reason I'm doing that is I know this is a heavy lift, but I would love to know with 33,000 subscribers, hey, 12% are Ohio State fans, 8% are Oregon fans, 6% are Oklahoma fans, whatever it is, I would love to have those metrics. So I'm compiling a list. We've had about 75 people respond. And so please hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail and just tell me, who do you root for? We've got a ton of exciting things in the works. I'm not going to announce them now because they're a ways off and I've got a lot of work to do to get us there. But we are on our way here at the Voice of College Football. Thanks to you and your cooperation. I also wanted to say to Jan, thank you so much for the lone super chat tonight. And I hope I didn't miss any. I don't think I did. So thank you so much for that. And we will see everyone very soon. Stay warm. And for you people in Florida and California, don't rub it in our faces. We are freezing, but stay warm, stay safe, and we'll see you soon.